Okay, so now let's go on to this. So notice that this picture looks very different than our previous picture. That's okay. We can still use some strategies in order to find out our missing variables, because with these, they want you to find the value of the variables and show your work. Okay, so let's look at wherever we want to start. So I'm going to start with this 35-degree angle. And so if I extend this line and this line because they're touching the 35-degree angle, well, remember we need parallel lines, and so since they put double arrows, that means this side and this side are parallel to each other, and then the single arrows that match means these sides are parallel to each other. Well, then I have to find the other side that is also parallel with this, so then that means I'm going to draw in this one. Okay? Now, you can always turn your paper so that the lines are going horizontal if that's just easier for you. You can always rotate your paper however you need to problem solve. But notice that this 35-degree angle is in between the two lines, and if I go diagonal to it, then I have alternate interior angles right here and here. And what do we know about alternate interior angles if these lines are parallel? Well, alternate interior angles are going to be congruent to each other. So I know that this angle is 35 degrees. Now that's not one of my variables, but that's okay. All right, so now I'm going to erase the lines I made. But I'm going to keep that angle that I found because that's going to stay true. Okay? All right, so now let's see if I can then connect it to this. So I want to find this 3x, so I'm going to make this line longer and this line longer because they're the two lines touching this angle. So again, I need to draw the other line that's parallel to this, which is right here. Okay? So these are my two parallel lines, and here's the transversal. Notice this 3x, and this whole angle right here is in between these two lines, so it's one of the interior types. And notice they're on the same side of the transversal. They're not diagonal. This one would be 3x and this is 3x. These are alternate interiors here and here. But these are on the same side of the transversal, so these are your same side interior angles or consecutive interior angles. And what do we know about consecutive interior angles? We know they're supplementary. So then I'm going to do 3x plus this whole angle here, which is the 28 and the 35. And those two angles, this is one whole angle, and this 3x have to equal 180 degrees. Okay, now we can work with that. Let's combine like terms. So 3x plus, what's that going to be? What is that, 63? Equals 180. So this whole angle here is 63 degrees when you add the 35 and the 28. Okay, then minus 63. So what does that equal? 117. Okay, and so then divide that out, and we get x equals 39. Okay, so you found x. That's one of your variables. All right, now I'm going to erase, and we need to find y. But anytime I find angle measures, I'll keep those in there. Okay, so now I need to find y. So y is touching this line and this line, so I'm going to extend those out. Now notice this time the one that's marked parallel is the single one, so then we need to draw in the other single arrow. So now I've got these two parallel lines cut by this transversal. Okay, so again, notice that this y degree angle and this whole angle here, which we found was 63 degrees, those are in between the two parallel lines and they're on the same side of the transversal. So these are same side interior angles or consecutive interior angles again, and we know that those angles are supplementary. I'm going to go ahead and just put 63 because that's what 35 plus 28 came out to be. And we know that that has to equal 180. So this angle y plus this whole angle 63 has to be 180 because these are consecutive interior angles. So then minus the 63, so y is 117. Okay. So when we have these closed figures, we're still looking for those, you've got parallel lines, we're still looking for alternate interior angles, alternate exterior angles, corresponding angles, or consecutive interior angles like these, or same side interior angles. Then you add those and set equal to 180, otherwise the other angles are congruent to each other like we did these alternate interior angles here. Okay? Alright, let's try another one, more practice. Okay, so let's look at B. So on part B, we need to find the y and the 8x minus 10. Okay, now I'm going to start with either this 36-degree angle or this 90-degree angle. I'm going to start with the 36. And so I'm going to extend the two lines that are touching the 36-degree angle. Okay. This one is marked with the single arrow, so then I need to draw in the other line that's a single arrow. So I've got these two lines. And again, if you want to turn your paper, turn your notebook so that the lines that are parallel are going horizontal and that's easier for you, please do that. Okay, so I've got this 36-degree angle and this 2y angle. What kind of angles are those two angles? They're in between the two lines and they're diagonal from each other, so these are alternate interior angles. And if the lines are parallel, what do we know about alternate interior angles? They're congruent. So I know this angle has to be 36 degrees. So what do I do if I need to solve for y? Well, you put 2y equals 36 degrees because 2y has to come out to be 36 degrees. Now solve. Divide. So y is 18. Good. Now you got one of your variables. Okay, your work and your answer, because these are typically 4 points when you're finding two variables. All right, now I am going to erase the lines, but keep the angles that you find because they stay. They're still going to be true for the rest of the problem because it's in the same figure. Okay? Alright, now I need to find this x angle, and I can cross out that 2y now because I know this is 36 degrees. So let's use the 90 then to help us with that. So I'm going to extend the side that has the 90 that's touching the 90. Notice it's got a single parallel, so you need to find its matching parallel and draw that one in as well. So again, if you need to turn your paper, you can. So this is parallel, cut by this transversal. This time, this angle and this whole angle here, from there to there, those are consecutive interior angles or same side interior angles because they're in between the two lines and on the same side of the transversal. They're not diagonal from each other. So then we know that consecutive interior angles are what? They're supplementary. Now, if I did 180 minus 90, minus this 90 here, what does that equal? It equals 90, which means that this angle here should more specifically then come out to be 90. So this is also 90, because this whole angle plus this whole angle has to equal 180, because these are consecutive interior angles. So now I can then pare this down a little bit. Then I know this angle plus this angle must equal this. Okay, so I did the 180 minus 90 part. That's where the 180 came in because these are consecutive interior angles. This was 90, which means then that has to be 90 to add up to a total of 180. So I'm just going to do this angle plus that angle equals the 90. So 8x minus 10 plus 36 has to equal 90 because it's a right angle box. Combine like terms, so 8x plus 26 equals 90. So 8x equals 64 when you subtract 26. So when you divide, x is 8. Okay, so again, this was a 4-point problem. You had 2 variables to solve for, and then you had to have the work to go with it. All right, so I want you to take a moment with your table partner and try part C. I know it's cut off a little bit down here, but go ahead and try it here. So try part C, pause, take about 2 to 3 minutes, see if you can solve for x and y on this. Okay, so I'm going to start with y just because I like to go left to right. Okay, so angle y is touched by this line and this line. So I'm going to extend those out. And then this has got a single parallel, so then I'm going to connect it with this single parallel. So these are my 2 lines, 2 parallel lines cut by transversal. So then what kind of angles are these 2 angles? These 2 angles are consecutive interior angles or same side interior angles because they're in between the 2 lines and on the same side of the transversal. So I know y plus 85 has to equal 180. Then you solve, so y should be 95. Okay? All right, then when you erase that and go to the x stuff, so if I'm trying to find x, it's touched by this line and this line, so I extend those. And then I have to find the parallel that matches it, which is this one. And now I'm looking at 3x. Notice in its group, it's in the bottom left position. And this group, 78, is in the bottom left position. So these are corresponding angles. And what do you know about corresponding angles if these lines are parallel? They're congruent. So 3x has to equal 78 degrees. So then you divide 78 by 3, and you get x equals 26. Okay? So the key to these is to look for whatever variable you're trying to solve for, extend the lines that are touching that variable. So when I was doing x, it's touched by this line and this line. One of those lines is parallel, so then you draw in the other line that's parallel with it. Then you try to identify what types of angles you have. And so in this case, we had corresponding angles. And so one of our one postulate said that if you've got parallel lines, then corresponding angles are congruent. So that's why I set them equal to each other. Over here, we drew out this line, extended that line, and extended that line out like this. And so these were consecutive interior angles. So then consecutive interior angles, by that last theorem we did, says that if you've got parallel lines, then consecutive interior angles are supplementary. So that's why we added those and set them equal to 180 to solve. Okay, so big thing is knowing what the theorems are when you have parallels. CAs, AIAs, and AEAs are congruent when you have parallel lines. The oddball is consecutive interior angles, which is the same as same side interior angles, and those are supplementary when you have parallel lines. Okay? All right. You have a worksheet to work on. Get as far as you can, do as many as you can, and the answer key is on Brightspace where you can check.